there, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, Gavcrimson here again, and it's Miller time as we take a look at a film by Arnold Louis Miller. Now, Miller was one of the pioneers of British exploitation cinema, whose early works like West End Jungle, Primitive London and London in the Raw have enjoyed a surprise renaissance in recent years, with West End Jungle being screened on BBC4 and London in the Raw and Primitive London being released on DVD and Blu-ray. For this video though, I want to take a look at one of the less well known and certainly one of the less well preserved of films by this West End Jungle boy. So we're going back in time to 1970 and Miller's film A Touch of the Other, or as it's known in America, House of Hookers. A Touch of the Other stars Kenneth Cope as Delga, a cheeky chappie who we first meet while he's plastering the walls of Soho with business cards which claim Delga gets things done if the price is right. It's not clear exactly what services Delga is advertising, but judging by the photo of Humphrey Bogart that hangs on his office wall, he seems to fancy himself as a bit of a private detective. His adverts certainly attract the interest of Soho, and soon Delga is getting on the wrong side of cops, as well as having run-ins with vicious gangsters, strip club owners and various other nefarious characters. Eventually it transpires that Delga has acquired his office from a friend of his who got into debt with Soho gangsters and has had to do a vanishing act, and now Delga has opened up shop in Soho in order to try and bring the bad guys down. In between this serious business, Delga also finds time for a bit of the other with two of his neighbours, both of whom are prostitutes. Elaine, played by Shirley Ann Field, is a woman who gives French lessons without knowing a word of French, while Wendy is a French black woman who can't give a bloke a massage without turning him on. Poor lass. Of course, the fact that Wendy O strips down to her underwear whilst giving a massage may explain why she's incapable of giving a massage without turning a bloke on in the process. And as she is a prostitute, why does it even matter to her anyway? Delga's sex plots with Wendy and Elaine bring him into contact with their pimp, a limp-wristed, mincing, stereotypical gay guy called Max. Max is somewhat pissed off that Delga has been getting these freebies from two of his girls, but still offers him the job of slipping a bribe to an ex-prostitute called Sheila. Things don't go exactly to plan, however, and Delga ends up being framed for murder twice over, whilst the kinky finale of this film involves a mass cat fight between current and ex-prostitutes, women being tied up, and a threesome, but not necessarily in that order. Significant a character as Arnold Louis Miller was in the early days of British exploitation cinema, he'd become far less of a player in X-rated filmmaking by the 1970s. His 1970s and 1980s output mostly consisted of travelogues and documentary shorts that were sent out to cinemas as a supporting features to all of the big films of the day. Before he left exploitation filmmaking behind him in favour of these travelogues, however, Miller made two films in the early 70s, A Touch of the Other and 1973's Sex Farm, also known as Frustrated Wives. The first time I saw A Touch of the Other, I was a little taken aback by how tame it seemed for a 1970 film. I wondered if Miller was starting to lose some of his exploitation film bite. It certainly lags behind the type of films that Derek Ford and Stanley Long were making at the same time, in terms of explicitness. However, having since seen Sex Farm, a film which in contrast is positively falling over itself to fill the screen with stimulated sex and big British boobs, I'm inclined to wonder if the presence of well-known and respectable actors here like Kenneth Cope and Shirley Ann Field didn't force Miller into a corner of having to emphasise the crime and comedy aspects of this film over its sleazy potential. The two films made by the same man and in relatively the same amount of time, both Sex Farm and A Touch of the Other seem to have strengths that the other film is lacking in. A Touch of the Other is competently acted, but is lacking in titillation, while Sex Farm is overflowing with titillation, yet is diabolically acted. I think the problem is that Miller was a better director of documentaries rather than handling fictional narratives and actors. This isn't so much of a problem in A Touch of the Other, where you have reliable actors like Kenneth Cope and Shirley Ann Field at the helm, but becomes a problem in Sex Farm, whose young and relatively inexperienced cast are clearly floundering under Miller's direction. A Touch of the Other is clearly above all else a vehicle for Kenneth Cope, an actor who early on in his career found a niche for himself playing odd, slightly unbalanced criminal types in B-movies like Naked Fury and Night of the Big Heat, before he got a chance to reinvent himself as a comedy actor in the late 60s, due in no small part to his iconic role in the TV series Randall and Hopkirk Deceased. Cope frequently appeared in comedies throughout the 1970s. He was in a few of the Carry On films and also appeared in a really bad British sex comedy called She'll Follow You Anywhere. Despite his popularity on both the big and the small screen, A Touch of the Other seems to have been his one shot at playing the lead role in a film, and you can't accuse him of not enthusiastically throwing himself at it. Cope frequently appears to be acting at a faster speed than the rest of the cast, playing this hyper, motor-mouth one-man joke machine. Cope is in practically every scene of the film, and yes, he also sings a theme tune, and gets to share screen time with his real-life wife, Rennie Lister, who plays the villainous double-crossing ex-prostitute Sheila, a name which also happened to be the name of Anna Louis Miller's wife, who co-produced this film with her husband. So, A Touch of the Other was a real family affair. I suppose your enjoyment of A Touch of the Other will boil down to how much you enjoy watching Kenneth Cope on screen. Personally, I found him lots of fun in Randall and Hopkirk Deceased, but maybe less so in the Carry On films and She'll Follow You Anywhere. For my money, he is on the right side of likeable here, but if he does grate on you, you can at least take satisfaction in the fact that when he isn't making jokes and doing impersonations, he's being chloroformed and getting the shit kicked out of him by Soho gangsters here. It's hard to get away from the fact that almost every aspect of this film feels at least 5 years out of date from when it was actually made. In fact, I'm sure if you were to show this film to someone without giving them any background information, they'd probably think it was made around 1965 rather than 1970. Everything about the film hollers the mid-60s rather than the 70s, from the cheery, swinging 60s soundtrack to the white go-go boots and miniskirts of the female cast members, not forgetting the flamboyant array of frilly shirts modelled by Mr. Cope. To quote a line from a Kinks song, his clothes are loud but never square. Cope's wardrobe even gets its own opening credit, the very swinging 60s boast of Kenneth Cope's costumes supplied by Lord John of Carnaby Street. Groovy, baby. Actresses Shirley Ann Field and Helen Francois also spend so much time in their underwear as to suggest that Miller was trying to evoke in the Dirty Mac Brigade nostalgia for the days of stocking and suspender fetish magazines like Spick and Span. Of course, no one knew the West End jungle quite like Arnold Louis Miller, and as with some of the 1970s British crime and British sex films that followed, this film now does have a time capsule quality of capturing a particularly seedy side of London that's now largely been consigned to the history books. Particularly memorable here is a visit to a strip club, complete with a dwarf barman and a stripper with a face only a mother could love and only Arnold Louis Miller would be interested in filming. A Touch of the Other's UK release history strongly suggests this film was born out of the entrepreneurial spirit of shoot it cheap, send it out on the second half of a double bill and grab all the easy money you can. It originally appeared as a supporting feature on a double bill with Hammer's The Creatures the World Forgot, before finding a more natural home as a co-feature to a European sex film. Surprisingly, A Touch of the Other also enjoyed a healthy amount of playdates in the States. According to the Temple of Schlock blog, the film first appeared in America in 1973 as The Happy Hookers, then was brought out again in 1975, this time under the title House of Hookers. In that deceptive exploitation film manner, the campaigns to both these US releases attempted to pass the film off as being part of the Happy Hooker series of films and books that were popular around the time. Notice how close the House of Hookers poster is to that of the original Happy Hooker book. I suppose if you're feeling particularly generous, you might say that A Touch of the Other was something of the missing link between a carry-on film and a film like Get Carter. And although I'm sure there are those out there who'll scream blue murder for me having even mentioned A Touch of the Other in the same breath as a carry-on film or Get Carter, that is the kind of cinematic territory that this film proudly occupies. Ironically, for a film that probably seemed dated even back then, its basic premise wouldn't be out of place in the direct-to-DVD British gangster films that currently fill up the shelves of supermarkets and represent the modern day face of the British exploitation film. Incredibly, Arnold Louis Miller is, as far as I'm aware, still around and now in his 90s, having outlived many of his contemporaries like Derek Ford, Stanley Long and Harrison Marx. So maybe directing travelogue rather than sexploitation films is the key to a long life. Anyway, I'll leave you with that thought, and all that remains for me to say is good night and God bless.